you. Thank you. Thank you. And I see a couple of children looking here saying, what are they clapping about? No, they don't like the sight of what they see. But it's a delight to be here. I was thinking just a few minutes before preparing and working on this talk, that several years ago when my home was in Toronto at that time, and I was studying in Chicago. My wife was gone, I think, visiting her family or something, and I was caught in a bit of a tornado-type storm, and there were about 25 or 30 cars in a pileup on the main highway in Chicago, the Dan Ryan that goes through Chicago, and hit my face against the steering wheel. My lip was cut, and the strange thing was I was driving for another 2 to 3 hours, was headed towards Marion, Indiana to speak. My lip was bleeding, and this guy, they wait like predators, you know, the trucks that rescue you, that stand on the side of that, park on the side of the highway when there's a storm. So they're immediately upon you, ready to take you to their own body shop and get the car fixed. So this guy came and hitched my car on and was driving me, and then he looked at me and he said, "Where are you from?" And of course my lips bleeding at that point. I didn't want to talk, but he was taking my car, so I thought I better answer politely. I said, "I'm from Canada." He looked at me and he said, "I thought you look French." And I looked at him and said, "In one statement, you have just insulted 3 cultures. My Indian heritage, my Canadian roots, and the poor French, who have nothing to do with me." When you think about where you come from and who you belong to, remember that most of you weren't around then, but I was quite the Hindi fan. I was raised in Delhi and used to be every Saturday go to the movies. I couldn't afford it. I never had any pocket money, but I made friends with those who could afford it, and they would take me out. And there was a song in Mother India. If you haven't seen Mother India, the movie, you have picked your own pockets. One of the greatest movies ever produced. And I remember talking to Sanjay Dutt about that once, and of course I think he happened to be Nargis's son in that movie, and ultimately ended up marrying Nargis. So they were just play acting in the movie. But we were chatting about it, and there was a Mohammed Rafi song that went this way. "Na main Bhagwan hu, na main shaitan hu. Duniya jo chahe samjhe, main to insan hu." Right? I'm not God. I'm not Satan. Take your pick of what you want to believe. I'm a human being. Main to insan hu. And that connection brings us together to look at the greatest story that the Bible talks about. And I want to do something I've never actually done before in all these years of ministry. I want to read 3 or 4 paragraphs from an article that I've penned very recently. I have 3 or 4 of my colleagues here, and we were together in the Ukraine a couple of weeks ago. And of course, they were at that point memorializing 1 year since that Maidan revolution, when about 100 of them were killed. Somewhere between 1 and 2 million had gathered in that square, and all kinds of carnage took place. The pictures are there, the flowers are there, and there's one section called the Heavenly 100, for the 100 that laid down their lives, and remembering that somebody had to pay with his or her life in order that the nation might continue to be heard and live. And in this long article that I just recently penned on our website, I won't read it in its entirety for you, but I want to read 2 or 3 paragraphs because it makes a segue into what I want to say to you. Here's what I said in the closing paragraphs, talking first about Kiev and Ukraine and the bloodletting that went on. And after I finished that, was flying back and was looking at the news and saw all that was going on in Ferguson, Missouri, where that young man was inadvertently or whatever gunned down and killed, and the whole city went into riots, and then a grand jury had acquitted the police officer, and the nation was on edge. And so at the end of the article, these 2 or 3 paragraphs, after covering those 2 stories, I said this: as we look at the Christmas season, we see the love of God at work. He sends and gives His Son so that we might not have to live with mere laws. We hear enough that we are a nation of laws. Laws don't change our flaws. They just reveal them. How about becoming a nation of grace? In Him, law and love converge. He brings the work of grace within us to make us hunger after the true, the good, and the beautiful. That rises beyond mere laws. It is not surprising that the Christmas message first came to a simple woman who just wanted to build a home, and then to a carpenter, one working with his hands. It was heralded by a band of shepherds, strangely blending their work, both for the temple and the home. They knew about lambs and sheep. We were the sheep. We awaited a lamb that could be the ultimate sacrifice to bring us to God. Sudden happenings through ordinary people can change history with profound truths. But who stood in Mary and Joseph's way? Religious and political authorities. Why? Because they lived by the power to enforce laws. Someone who transcended those laws would spell danger to their power. Herod felt threatened and wished to silence the message. We still have the Herods today. Silence the Christmas songs. Don't let our children hear the message in their schools. Take away anything that tells a Christmas story. Why? Because we have our laws. Yes, Herod's ghost looms large. Is it any wonder our young feel helpless? Caesar felt threatened because he wanted to be all-powerful. Caesar knew how to make laws. He knew nothing about grace. His empire is gone and his crown rolled in the dust. He was powerless to build an eternal city. We still have the Caesars today. The high priest felt threatened because he wanted to be the dispenser of salvation. Why give it away free? Pilate felt threatened and so didn't even wait for the answers. We still have such interrogators today. Our academics surely know how to ask questions, but never give a platform to hear the answers. Standing in front of a microphone is easy. Taming the heart is ever elusive. Times may change, people don't. At the square in Kiev, there is a section dedicated to the Heavenly 100, memorializing the dead, but with pointers to heaven. These died so that others may live. It is a reflection of a greater truth. Gospel truths sneak up on us in strange ways. It seems as though death is still the loudest voice calling for life. Several years ago, terrorists broke into 2 hotels in Mumbai and opened random fire. So many were killed. The carnage was bloody. One Indian actor was found alive amidst the pile of bodies under a table where several had dived for cover. In an interview, he was asked, "Why didn't they also shoot you when they walked by?" He said, "I was so covered with someone else's blood that they thought it was mine and left me for dead." He didn't know it, but he hinted at the gospel. The blood of our Savior saves us. Here's the Christmas scene. What a contrast. A stable, a baby, talking about a throne and a king. Where is the penultimate scene for that child? On a hill called Calvary, a place least expected, a place where blood was shed and we were covered. The Son cries out to the Father to forgive the murderers. He cries out to those closest to him to comfort and take care of his mother. He tells all of us that the price has been paid for our isolated selves, isolated from God and from each other. What a story. May we hear the story afresh. It is our only hope, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. He opened the door for you and me to enter heaven. When I finished my brief talk at the square in Kiev, our guide, whom I'd only met moments before, walked up to me and, wiping her tears, kissed me on both sides of my face and said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Hope is attached to love. Love is the only route for peace, but it starts with the love for God as we receive his gift at Christmas. All other gifts are wrapped in paper. His gift was wrapped in his grace. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear. A grace-filled Christmas season is my prayer for the streets of Ferguson and the square in Kiev, and indeed for our troubled world. I was writing that on a flight back from Kiev, and this only comes at the tail end of other things I'd said in the article. And as I stand before you, you have given me the courtesy of giving me your presence tonight for this time. What happens at Christmas is a paradigm shift and a redefinition of all of the essential realities that we face in life. It's a paradigm shift. A baby in a manger challenging the Caesars of that day, redefining everything about origin, meaning, morality, destiny, most essentially defining what it means to be human. Meto insanhu, what does it mean? Viktor Frankl, who spent 2 or 3 sessions in Auschwitz as a prisoner, wrote this: if we present man with a concept of man which is not true, we may well corrupt him when we present him as an automaton of reflexes, as a mind machine, as a bundle of instincts, as a pawn of drives and reactions, as a mere product of instinct, heredity, and environment. We will then feed the nihilism to which modern man is in any case prone. I became acquainted with the last stage of corruption in my second concentration camp, Auschwitz. The gas chambers of Auschwitz were the ultimate consequence of the theory that man is nothing but the product of heredity and environment, or as the Nazis like to say, of blood and soil. I'm absolutely convinced that the gas chambers of Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Majdanek were ultimately prepared not in some Ministry of Defense or other in Berlin, but rather at the desks and lecture halls of nihilistic scientists and philosophers. It didn't happen in the defense ministry. It came as a product of the intellectuals of that day, that we were nothing more than the product of blood and soil, our heredity and environment. They lost contact with essence. Who we are essentially. See, this is the difference between what essentialist philosophy talks about and existentialist philosophy talks about. An essentialist will say your essence defines your existence. The existentialist will say that your existence and your choices define who you essentially are. It's the wrong way around. Your choices have to be dictated by who you are and why you are and what life's purpose is all about. And so when this child was born, numerous titles are given to him through the scriptures. First of all, let me tell you, hundreds of prophecies went into this moment. Hundreds of prophecies. The confluence of time, culture, location, so many factors went into all of this coming into focus in this one little life. The place was predicted, Bethlehem. It comes from the Hebrew Bethlehem, which literally means the house of bread. And so Micah talked about the birthplace. And Isaiah talked about the virgin birth. Behold, a virgin shall conceive, the virginity of Mary, so that she herself was stunned before this. Interestingly, even the Quran sustains the virgin birth and talks about the reality that Jesus was indeed born of a virgin. So the virgin birth, the time, the place, and all the prophecies that went into the moment of crucifixion and the resurrection. So let me take 4 titles here. First, he is called the Son of Man. He is called the Son of Man. In the face of Jesus, you see the representation of what value God places on your life and mine. You see, Moses gave his people 613 laws. 613. Why do we need so many laws? when we were struggling with this health plan in America and still struggling with it, which the president brought to Congress. What is it, 2,000 pages? 2,000 pages, if not more? So much so they didn't even read it. They just passed it. They said, we'll read it after we pass it. Sounds like a politician. We'll read it after we pass it. Why 2,000 laws, 2,000 pages? Why do you go into a plane and hear something like this, that you are not allowed to touch, tamper, disable, or destroy the smoke detector? Why 4 things? Why not just say, don't mess with it? This is a smoke detector, it's here for a purpose. Just leave it alone. Don't touch, tamper, disable, destroy. Because you can go to a court of law, and if you're just accused of tampering, you say, I didn't tamper with it, I just disabled it. This is the way. But one lawyer was telling me that you no longer are wise asking an accused if you are ever alone in the room with the victim. Because technically speaking, if you are with somebody, you're not alone. So if you say, were you ever alone in the room with the victim? He can say no, because in his mind he's saying, I was not alone, I was with somebody. So every word dies the death of 1,000 qualifications. You have to requalify and requalify and requalify. Most of the laws in the healthcare system are written so that people don't abuse it. What did Malcolm Muggeridge say? The depravity of man is at once the most empirically verifiable fact, at the same time that it is the most intellectually resisted. Do you hear that? It is the most empirically verifiable fact. You see it on every side, but it's intellectually resisted. I met a couple of you here before the meeting who said you were at the forum that I did at Johns Hopkins University. That was recently, but years ago I did a forum at Johns Hopkins University, and Francis Collins, the scientist, and myself were the only Christian voices. The rest were all other worldviews. And at the end of it, a woman stood up and said to me, I don't agree with you that the heart is corrupt, that there is evil within us. We are pretty good. And I said, you don't agree with me? And the louder she shouted, the more she was proving my point. She was clenching her fist like this, really angry over the fact that she was saying, we are not bad. It's like a guy holding a gun to your head and say, tell me I'm a nice guy, or else, What does it mean to be human? And what he says right from us when he is the Son of Man, 613 laws were converging in him in grace and truth. Here's what I want to say to you. People came to Jesus and tried to trick him. It's always a trick question they had because they were hoping to stump him. So they asked him this question, is it all right to pay taxes to Caesar? What were they hoping he would say? No, don't pay Caesar. Then Caesar starts arresting him. We pay our taxes on April 15th. I hate that day. I just hate it. Page after page after